Is working. There we go. Okay, I think we're ready. Let's do it. Okay. So I'm going to just jump right into sort of the interview portion. So eventually there'll be a whole intro and all that. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, today on the show, we have Cyrus Seraj with MG Group Chicago with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Let me tell you more about Cyrus. Now, Cyrus joined the MG Group. By the way, if you're a local Chicago person, that's the Mario Greco Group. You might know it by that name. But he joined the Mario Greco Group in 2016. He was born and raised in Chicago and the Northwest suburbs and spent most of his childhood alongside his father rehabbing apartment buildings and single-family homes. Cyrus graduated with a Bachelor of Science from Loyola University and later attained a JD from Loyola's School of Law with a focus in real estate. Since 2004, Cyrus has focused on commercial and residential sales, leasing, and management, alongside 10 years of experience as a loan originator and processor, and brings an all bases covered approach to his clients to ensure the highest quality of representation. Cyrus, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Great to be here.
Great to have you. So you went from rehabbing homes with your father to then going and getting your law degree and back into real estate, sort of going doing mortgages, and then kind of, so you've been involved in the real estate industry ever since you were little.
Ever since I was mowing the lawn for my dad at 12 in front of the apartment buildings. Yes.
Sure. Well, tell us how you decided to. So when you went to law school, was the thought, were you wanting to be a real estate attorney, or were you wanting to go a different direction with law?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I was actually pre-med in undergrad. I wanted to be a doctor. Um, by the time I got to my senior year and actually started volunteering in the hospitals and um, got employed as an EMT and was out in the field, I realized I don't have the stomach for this. I've come to respect physicians and what they do, and it just wasn't the right fit for me. And then I went into finance with my father. He's a self-made man, so he started his
Yeah.
own mortgage brokerage. So straight out of college, even during college, I was helping him out. I'm kind of a numbers guy. I love math. That's where my skills are strongest. So I was enjoying doing finance with him for several years. Back then you didn't need an originator's license, and it was kind of the Wild West, if you recall. So, of course, I got into brokering real estate transactions at the same time. The glory days, finance the deal, broker the deal,
Sure.
get some experience on that front as well. Actually, didn't go to law school until the market crashed in '08. Had a couple zero quarters and realized I might need another career. That's when I got into that. And fortunately, with my passion for real estate, by the time I finished school, the market had rebounded a bit, and I was able to kind of get some traction again and decided, okay, I didn't necessarily want to become an attorney. So I was happy to get back into the real estate field, just with another kind of tool in the tool belt, another skill. I do feel there's a lot of value in having experience in all the facets of a real estate transaction. So that was just one more kind of check on the box of what I could help advise on, not taking the role of an attorney, not taking the role of a loan officer, but at least being a soundboard for my clients if they do want a second opinion or want to bounce ideas off me. Is this does this at least sound right to you? Or um, you know, trusting in my referrals a little bit more, knowing that I have that background and some experience in those fields.
Yeah, it's amazing. You really, it's incredible that it's incredible to go just back to college for a second, because I did the pre-med thing for one semester and then I was like, oh, this is really, really a difficult track. And thankfully got out before I got into like organic and inorganic chemistry. And you made it all the way through those. And then we're like, nah, I'm good. Which is amazing. And then the same thing with law and mortgages, like real estate just kept sort of bringing you back in. And I love that. And here you are now. I really want to chat with you because you have a kind of an interesting trajectory. I think we were talking about this. Well, we actually didn't talk about this ahead of time, but you'd sent this over and some information that we requested, and I thought this was particularly interesting because um, this idea of the one of the big questions that our audience is always asking when they write this in all the time to us, which is, hey, I'm an individual practitioner and I'm thinking about either starting a team or joining a team. And of course, there's depending on what their goals are and how long they've been in the business and where they're struggling, and all of those things would sort of help somebody make a better decision around that. But you've done both, and you've done it in a way that's, I think, kind of unique. So I'm really interested in digging into that a little bit. So if I understand correctly, the first 11 years of your career, you were solo practitioner. And then in the last 8 years, you joined the Mario Greco team, which again, Mario Greco group, I should say, rather, which is, by the way, here in Chicago, one of the preeminent groups, highly respected, great people. They've got an amazing team. They're one of the big boys here in Chicago. So I'm excited to learn what it was like on your own. And obviously, you were successful there, and then figuring out that, oh, I think I do want to be involved with a larger group. And I'm just curious on any advice you might have to people who are thinking about that. But let's start at the beginning. So you started out as an individual, independent agent. And then tell us how that process went, like as you were growing. And then at what point did you sort of say, I think it's time that I get some additional resources and support and think about joining a team?
Sure. Yeah, started independent. I kind of went in the reverse direction that most people go. I think a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
was gonna say,
people
yeah,
in this day and age, they join a team because they feel it's necessary. They want the accelerated learning curve. They need to build a book and need opportunities that a team leader can provide. And then mentality being I hit a certain threshold, then I can go out on my own and you know retain more of my commission, right? I mean, that's kind of the
sure.
model, and a lot of brokerages are kind of built around that model, and you start getting recruited once you hit a certain threshold by those brokerages. Hey, keep 100% of your commissions. I
Yeah.
get 58 of those emails a day, and I'm sure we all do.
We have one. I work at one of those firms, and that's what I do all day is send those kind of emails. So I appreciate that as well. Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't so much a voluntary thing. It was just again working with my father who had his
yeah,
own business, and I just that's how I got into the game.
sure,
So I didn't make that conscious decision. And I think back when I started in '04, there was the team model wasn't as prevalent anyway. So I it wasn't even something on my radar. I just figured, okay, you start with your sphere and you build off that. You've got friends, you've got family, and you just generate all you can. And I just kept hitting roadblocks that I think we all at some point have become accustomed to at this point. There's something to be said about working with family and friends. There's a certain divide of, um, I guess, trust and perception. Now, do they perceive you as a friend or a professional? I think that is a major barrier in the way you advise people, and sometimes they may feel there's some bias to that. They may not actually take what you say as professional guidance and credible advice, as opposed to just talking more casually. And that was something that kind of hindered my progress. And then again, resourcefulness. I learned quickly that um, being able to be that all bases covered type of professional is really invaluable to retaining clients in the long term. That's something that I struggled with. I mean, one person can only be in front of in one place at one time on one call at any given moment. So I didn't, I was getting stretched too thin essentially, and it was just tough to service my clients the way they deserve to be serviced. And I could tell that they started to feel that um, I they weren't my only client, and that's what I tried to. That's where I wanted to evolve my practice into that type of feeling that the best analogy I can give is everyone has two types of friends. The type of friend where you may lose touch for 2 years, and when you reconnect, it's like nothing. Time hasn't moved. And then there's other people that you feel like if you don't continually nurture and keep in contact with, that friendship will kind of fade. And that's how I kind of look at my business model now. I want that type of connection with all the clients that I meet and work with, and I want them to feel that type of bond, and that I'm that resourceful to them. I want to become their go-to for more than just one transaction, which may take only 2 to 3 months. This is a lifelong relationship type of business, and I stick with that philosophy wholeheartedly. And what I did learn was working on your own, it's tough. It's tough to build that type strength of a bond, because you're just pulled in multiple directions. You don't have any support,
Right.
and people do get that sense. People are, a lot smarter than you may think, just because they may not be quite as educated in real estate. They have that sense, and they can kind of pick up on, um, how much attention and how much focus you're able to give them at any given time. And if they need more attention and they need more guidance and you're not available to provide it, that's when you're at risk of losing them to someone who can give them the service that they need.
Yeah, it's where teams really shine these days, is not just solving challenges for agents who maybe are struggling, but also struggling to for new business, or for whatever reason agents might consider joining a team. But really, this idea, you're right, about your client as an individual practitioner without a team, your clients might start to notice, hey, boy, Cyrus seems really busy, and they're not necessarily going to say that to you, because that takes a different level of sort of vulnerability for a client to say that. And usually most clients aren't going to say that to your face, but they might be saying it to their partner, who is on, also helping with the transaction. And so you're right that sometimes agents don't even realize, like you were saying, sometimes the clients are smarter than than the agents sort of give them credit for, meaning, they're thinking things that we don't know. So I think that's a really strong point, is just because the client doesn't tell us, hey, it's been hard to get a hold of you, doesn't mean that it's easy to get a hold of you, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you started looking for a team to help fill in some of those gaps, to get additional support, obviously, maybe just sort of lighten the load of having to wear every single hat, which is of course what individual agents, depending on the firm they work at, hopefully the firm can help out with certain things. But ultimately, a lot of individual agents are doing most everything on their own, from all the document management to obviously all the marketing, and the customer service, and then of course servicing the client while they're going through the transaction. And all of those things can be, well, it's just one person can't be good at all of that stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you need a support system, and I think every individual broker will hit a certain threshold where they start feeling less efficient and able to take on new business. Um, every broker's different, every person's different. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and sometimes you do have to kind of make up for whatever your weaknesses are with the supporting roles that other people can provide and the resources that people can provide. And again, I think as we evolve into the future, your roles as an agent are expanding and changing, and we're not the same as people, and the expectations of our roles are much different than they were 10 years ago. It's funny, I was watching one of your previous podcasts, and it wasn't directly part of the conversation, but you had referenced somebody who 8 years ago made a comment in passing about how, 10 years from now there won't be any real estate agents.
Mm,
There's no need for you guys. And I think you guys had a good laugh about how, hey, we're still here.
thank goodness.
Um, but I mean, I always look for some type of truth in whatever people are saying, and to the point of, you know, the the role of an agent and the definition of an agent 10 years ago, I think has changed, with respect to, what type of value we can provide our clients and what the expectations are of how we are valuable to the people who we represent. And maybe 10 years ago, we were relied on to source properties and run comparables and give buyers and sellers, you know, comparative market analysis and opinions of value. Whereas, we've really evolved into more of an advisory role today where the information is out there. I don't think there's any client out there that's technologically savvy that needs us to source property for them
They
or
they've got
identify.
Zillow.
They've got Zillow. Yeah, I mean, just anecdotally, I'm working with buyers. I set up 4 automated searches for them just because I'm wired to do so. They're from out of town. They came in last weekend. They sent me an email. They haven't been really utilizing my automated searches. They sent me an email with 20 Zillow links that said, Here's the list. We're scouting on our own. We don't need you for that." Whereas, when I started my career, clients did need me for that. I mean, we were providing different types of information, and now we're in a place where we have to be able to provide what today's clients need. And I think the group model is geared much more strongly towards that. With We need to give vendor referrals, we need resources at our disposal. We need they count on us for the trust element of being able to give them reliable inspectors, attorneys, contractors. These are things that they have a more difficult time vetting. When you work with a group and you've got a track record, you've got a high volume of sales, they know that you've done this repeatedly. I mean, I've worked with 5 or 6 different attorneys, over the course of the year instead of just my one go-to when I was a solo practitioner. I've worked with half a dozen to a dozen inspectors as opposed to my one go-to. You need to expand your resource base in order to really serve the client well, so that you can kind of pair them with um, the other facets of the transaction that they rely on us for things like that. And I think even after the fact of these transactions, you want to build that level and layer of trust with them, because that's kind of what I think creates the bond. Just having being their go-to for every element of owning that real estate or selling real estate in the future. And I do think it's important that all the connections you can help them make are solid.
Yeah.
And that was one of the main reasons I went to a group, because I wanted um, their opinions, and I wanted to be able to feed off that, because the wrong referral can also cost you the client. I mean, we're all kind of interconnected at this point, and that's kind of the all bases covered element of things, where we all have to kind of support the client, and they need to develop trust with everybody they work with on all sides of the equation. And if we can get them there, I think we retain them for forever, because they can feel that, hey, I can trust him and his advice, and I know he's got the experience to guide me in the right directions whenever I need some help.
I think that is such an important point, and I want to go back to this vendor list sort of concept. I'm going to kind of hyper focus on it for just a minute or two, because I think it's something that realtors can really lean into, especially now when you're right. They don't need you to source properties. They've got Redfin and Zillow and Trulia and a million other public facing websites that have already done the heavy lifting about home searches. Of course, agents still need to be involved in that, obviously. But you're right. Like, the transaction itself might only be 2 or 3 months from start to finish, home buying or selling. And then there becomes all of this other work that is kind of intangible or not directly related to sales, that affects every single homeowner, which is, I need to get stuff fixed or built or adjusted, or I need a service professional to come out and look at whatever. And I'm a homeowner, and by the way, at our firm we have 800 agents, and we have a vendor list too, but we don't, our vendor list is just for our agents. But we don't, like, how often we're updating it, it's probably not very often. So even when I need to get a service professional, I have to go to we have a Facebook group for our agents to be like, I'm looking for a plumber, and I don't even know this stuff. And so I think, agents could really become super valuable after or before a sale, to the client or the lead, or whatever we want to call them, the relationship, I guess, is the best way to say it. And to say, hey, before you ever need before you start making phone calls and Google searching and looking for a moving company or whatever, plumber, I have got three great plumbers that I know are awesome, and I've also got great painters, and I've got great accountants, and blah blah blah, attorneys, etc. And you can become routinely valuable because there's always ongoing projects at every home. Every home's got some project that's not completed yet, or is about to be started, or they're thinking about starting. So it really, I hadn't really thought of it too much. I've interviewed a ton of people on the show who do a big thing about vendor lists, but this idea that vendors are always being needed by homeowners. And so if you can really lean into that, not you, of course, Cyrus, you do this, but for anyone who's listening, really make this your value add, above and beyond helping them buy or sell a home. Make this like, no, this is actually how I'm really going to be able to provide value after the transaction, or even beforehand. I think that it really is such a cool thing, because you're providing incredible value, because you're saving that person time, and hopefully, any mistakes by hiring the wrong person.
Yeah, and I think even with the follow-ups, post transaction, again, back to the point that our clients are probably smarter than we give them credit for. I think they can pretty easily tell the quality and the direction of every touch you make. And if I'm reaching out with, "Hey, do you want a CMA of your property?" I think they can pretty quickly sense like I'm fishing for business.
Yeah,
I'm looking out for myself and trying to make sure
sure.
I get my touches in, as opposed to, "Hey, did you appeal your taxes last year?
Yes, that is an
Did you,
incredible,
you know,
incredible thing to suggest to somebody.
you're going to get a response
Yeah,
every time when they sense that you're genuinely looking out for them and making sure that they're staying on top of their game. And hey, did you have how's the house look? Do you need any repairs? Are you staying on top of schedule on schedule with maintenance? Those types of things, those types of touches, they really sustain the bond,
yeah,
and that's what I'm all about. I know a lot of today's um, you know model is geared towards. I know it's the Zillow lifestyle at this point, where people source and generate 90% of their business off something like that. I'm kind of the opposite. Maybe I'm a dinosaur. I'm a 90% direct referral guy, and 10% lead sourcing and whatnot. So I do have to rely on um, sustaining the bond with people after the fact. And I think um, if you start with the relationship in that framework, you can sustain it over the long term. And those are the metrics that matter to me. What hurts me the most is not whether I win a lead at the front end. It's whether I buy someone into a property, and if they list with someone else, that to me is, I mean, I use it as a learning experience, but it's a failure.
sure.
How did I fail this
It is.
client? How did
Yeah.
I lose the bond with them?
Yep.
That's what I look at. I don't look at conversion rates and all the metrics of the front end that a lot of the more very successful top producing agents. This is um, what we're all numbers people at the end of the day. I mean, it's we like to quantify our success, and it certainly has value, and everybody needs to be able to set goals for themselves, and the numbers, be it production, be it conversion, um, whatever it is on the front end, it's valuable. But I think what's invaluable is retention, and I think that's something that it's easy to lose sight of, because we can become hyper focused on generating and growing our business, um, but preserving the relationships that you've built, and how to go about doing that from day one is what's most important to me, at least.
I agree. I was at this top producer breakfast yesterday, and there was somebody was sharing this anecdote. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. And the anecdote was, this top producer, top one percenter, was saying he was talking about a friend of his who's also a top one percenter, different person, and said this other person spends about $90,000 a year on leads. And the person who was speaking said he just blew his mind, and he said, "Boy, I would take that same 90,000 and invest it back into my sphere of influence." And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? He's like, I would throw events, I'd be buying gifts, I'd be doing all sorts of fun things to help their life in some way, or whatever way he thinks might add to their life, maybe experiential stuff, client events, whatever, or maybe little gifts here and there, or just whatever whatever that means to him. And I thought, boy, I've never heard anybody say that exact phrase before. And it made, and look, we have had lead companies sponsor our show. We love lead companies. So if you are a lead
Of
company
course.
who's listening, I am not anti-lead. There's a million ways to build this business. But I thought that's a really interesting idea, is taking that money. And that this particular agent who said, I wouldn't spend $90,000 on leads, he wouldn't be good at that anyway. But this other person he's referencing is very good at that. So everyone can do it differently. But I thought that's so interesting. You take that same money, invest it back into your sphere, and you're going to have just people who love you for life because you're consistently adding value. So just curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think if you can somehow play the middle,
Yeah.
you take advantage of both.
Yeah.
That again, I mean, I do feel like we're getting caught up in this new model of, fighting for new business and generating and growth. So everyone's front of mind is growth oriented, is lead capture, is how do I generate more opportunities, and that is extremely important, of course, for the the agent who got their license this morning to the top producer in the country. But if you can find some balance, it helps you not lose sight of the people who got you where you are today. It's easy to pat yourself on the back, but it takes clients that stick with you, and it takes those people they need to be appreciated, they need to be remembered, and they need to feel like this is a lifelong relationship. That has to be
Yeah.
a high priority, and I would find a way to split it right down the middle, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, of course, none of us are ever going to be content with where we're at. We always want more, and we want to grow and we want to improve, and not just our skill set but our client base. I mean, that's what we do this for. We're all motivated, ambitious people. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this field to begin with. But um, it is important. Not don't lose sight of what got you to where you're at right now. That's something I believe firmly in. I'm always a little bit nervous to get too big or too successful. I don't want that chip on my shoulder. I don't want to feel like I, put myself in a position to peak, so to speak. I mean, that's something that I feel will cost me my edge.
Yeah.
It's even kind of where I've positioned myself on this team. I don't know if you want to transition into something like that, but I'm trying to create a model where I'm somewhere in the middle. I like being an example. I like being a role model to some newer agents, but I also want to be able to look up to other people as well. I want a mentor for the rest of my life. I don't care if I'm the top producing agent in this country. Who do I look up to, right? I mean, I I always want to grow. I always want to learn, improve my skill set, figure out new tricks of the trade. I mean, at the end of the day, your skill is the most important asset you have. It's not just your ability to, perfect some type of model. It's how you serve your clients. I mean, that will reflect on your success more than anything else. So, by the same token, don't forget the people that got you where you're at. And yeah, I mean, hey, showing appreciation to them in any way possible is always money well spent. You do have to spend. I mean, that's part of the game.
It's a
Got to spend
business.
money to make it.
Yep. And let's You're an academic, or at least I consider you to be more academically minded than myself. So, and I mean that with the highest level of respect, because you went through arguably two of the most difficult tracks, law and medicine, and and here you are. And I don't get to talk to a lot of realtors who have that background, and so I would love to talk about the state of the market, because it is a goofy time. Yesterday, the Fed raised rates. I think it was the ninth straight time, although it was a small increase, 25 basis points, I believe. But um, banks are failing. We've had three banks fail in the last week in this country. There's a lot of goofiness going on around. Of course, lending rates are still, higher, of course, than they were several years ago, and inventory is still a challenge in most of the major markets in this country. And then you have, a good percentage of the population that refinanced to about 3% or 4% in the last couple of years. And that's also going to create, stoppages around listings. And, I worry about that for myself, because I have one of those, low interest mortgages now. And I'm like, God, what's my incentive to move? Like like it's going to be tough. So I am curious. I think of myself more as a consumer than, because I don't practice as an agent. So I am just like, I don't know what's going on out there right now, really. And I'm curious on sort of what you're seeing out there, and maybe if you've made any pivots or adjustments this year to account for some of the goofiness in the market.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation is definitely shifting depending on who you're talking with. I think it's a little bit of an easier conversation with buyers this year. Uh, it's more of a balanced market. Is something I can kind of more confidently tell them. Yes, inventory is low, but a lot of buyers are spooked with the rates, and the demand is not nearly as intense as it was a year ago or 2 years ago, when you could basically buy a house, interest free, almost to
Yeah,
the point where a car note,
right.
um, type of rate. So yeah, and again, and I'm sure everyone's had these conversations with their mortgage brokers and whatnot. Hey, you date a rate, um, and it's I think it's become easier to discuss, to keep it buyer centered. Talk more about, look, rates are what they're going to do. It can impede you from progressing through your life and what you want to do. And I mean, if you want to become a homeowner, you can't let an interest rate get in the way. Now, it may adjust your comfort level in terms of budget,
Yeah, your spend.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but hey, I mean, that is what it is, and the rates could go up tomorrow, and you'll have been glad you bought today. And who pays a mortgage for 30 years? At some point, you're going to refi, and you'll be watching for opportunities to improve your payment and improve your rate. I mean, this is all a cyclical nature of real estate, that everybody goes through over the course of their life. But on the sell side, yeah, I mean, I feel you there. It is a challenge. It does make me nervous. It is tough to overcome that primary objection. Well, I'm paying 2.5% now.
Right.
Why would I ever want to sell this? I've you know I've got equity as well. So I mean, we're not in that 2008 mode here where people are underwater, over leveraged. That's not happened
Thank
here.
goodness.
People are in a comfortable position, and they do feel like the market's still relatively in their favor because of the low inventory. But that's not to say that other factors may start coming into play. When we do have this level of uncertainty in the general macro market, um, other sectors get impacted, and people can find themselves accumulating other revolving debt, or there's a lot of job insecurity that's come into the fold now, especially in tech.
Oh, brutal,
So I mean,
brutal quarter for tech this year. It's been. I just talked to a tech recruiter yesterday, and she's like, she works at Oracle, and Oracle's had all sorts of layoffs as well, which I didn't realize. But yeah, I mean, there's tremendous job insecurity right now, particularly in that sector.
yeah, and what I tend to tell sellers is, um, you know, there there are leaks in this boat. It may not feel like it to you because we're talking real estate right now, and you may have accumulated some equity. You're paying a great rate, but um, if part of your plan was to trade up from this condo to this single family home, let's get it on the market. Don't let interest rates stand in the way because again, there's a cyclical nature to that, and there's no guarantee you won't be paying 12% when you truly can't manage the space that you're living in and you're just bursting at the seams. And you don't want to wait for some of these leaks to get exposed and a higher number of sellers that feel compelled to list their property or sell their property by force. At that point the market starts turning against you, and now you're in an oversupplied market trying to sell your property. Just because you have leverage today and you feel like you're in a good position, these work in cycles. You don't need to time everything perfectly, and it's almost always a trade, right? So whatever you feel like you may be losing on one end, you get back on the other end, and I try to keep people in that perspective. But you're right, a lot of I it's tough to have conversations with people that make any headway because they're just they're married to this low interest comfortable position that they have right now, and unless they feel there's a substantive reason to sell, they're pretty closed about it, closed minded about even considering that as an option. So it's a tough time, and yeah, I mean, obviously, in this market, we all want to be listing agents because it's just the side to play. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's for the people that got into this business over the past 2 to 3 years, this is a wake up call, and you do have to kind of reconsider your approach a little bit, and you know grind a little bit
Yeah,
harder.
this
You need to
this is the year to grind.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, you need to give yourself as many opportunities as possible. And again, I do think the balanced approach works. And that's, I think, the value of the group model is, more opportunities, the better, because it's not quite as abundant in terms of you know the way people are responding to conversations nowadays. A lot of people are just completely shut down about it, and um, you're kind of limited to people who are in a more pressing scenario where they are willing to forego their great scenario of 2.5% and just deal with whatever interest rate they have to pay because they have to.
Yeah.
There's always going to be that market, but it's a thinner pool.
I think it's a thinner pool of clients for sure because of the I think rates are you said primary objection there. And I also think it's an opportunity for agents like yourself and our listeners to really consider to realize a couple of things that when the market thins, which it is right now to some degree, although it is improving, we've been seeing increased activity. So I'm excited for that. But for everyone seems to be struggling a little bit right now, agent wise. But I think it's a good opportunity to pick up market share because I will tell you, we have another company which is a holding company for agents that aren't actively practicing, and we started this company just to give you guys an idea of just how crazy this is. So this is for people who don't practice real estate but want to keep their license active. Okay, so that's what a holding company is. I don't know if every state allows it, but in Illinois we allow that. So we started this about 8 or 9 years ago because people would leave our company and leave the industry, and we were like, oh, what are you doing with your license? Oh, I'm taking to a holding company. Well, we learned what a holding company was, and then we were like, oh, we could do that. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing this up in the last so we do almost no marketing for this. We just like send out emails to agents going, if you're not practicing, do this. That's literally all we've ever done for this holding company. In the last since the beginning of the year, we have added 120 new agents to the holding company. which now puts our holding company at about 900 agents, which is actually bigger than our actively producing company, which has 800 agents. So we are seeing a mass exodus of realtors leaving the industry. Now, the top agents aren't leaving, of course, but we're seeing smaller producers, the onesie, twosie, the half, the part-time agents starting to fall away and join firms like our holding company, which is great for our holding company. But it's really a telling sign for the industry that here in Chicago we've got about 46,000 realtors, and we think we're the largest holding company now, but we're not the only one, and the other ones must be flourishing as well. And so that being said, it's a great time to pick up market share, and I think it's a great time for realtors like yourself, Cyrus. You obviously are doing this. You just answered the question about, what do you do in a low interest rate environment? What do you say to people who are stuck in these rates and are feeling like kind of almost hamstrung? Like I maybe I'd like to move, but I don't want to double my rate. And having those conversations, I think, is really important. And an agent can do that now because people are thinking about it, right? People are thinking, especially if you bought your home 2 years ago, right? You're probably now at that point where you're settled to your home, and now you're starting to think about what's next. Maybe you're in your forever home, and it doesn't matter, you're good. But most of us, aren't in our forever home. So this idea of like, now it's maybe a couple years in, especially if you bought during that time or refinance at that time. Now it's like, okay, what's next? And you're not sure. And guidance and help and education is so critical. And it's just, I don't want to have to, I don't want to really have to go to a news source to learn about what interest rates are doing and what the market is doing. Like, I really just want my or rather, I'll give a different example. When I go to do my taxes every year, I don't really want my accountant just going, send me your receipts, and I'll do the taxes, because she does that anyway. I want her to be like, "Hey, I have an idea for you." Like, that's what I always want. Like, "Oh, here's a way to save more money, or here's a deduction you didn't know about." Now, does she always do that? No. But I would probably pay her more if she said, "Well, I'm going to add on some additional fees, but this next year I'm going to give you all these other ideas." I would absolutely pay that, because I think we're all looking for guidance and help. Especially around this, and this is where I think the value of the realtor really comes in. Is this, if you can say, here's why you still may want to consider going from a 3% rate to a 6.5% rate, or whatever it might be today. And you might say, that might sound crazy, but hear me out. I actually have some logic here about why that could actually make sense, right? Like, that's a really compelling narrative. And I think, and it doesn't have to be a perfectly told story with like it's a slam dunk to obviously, trash your good mortgage for one that's a little bit tougher. But people are thinking about that stuff anyway. So I think now is the time to engage in those conversations. Curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point that some of the part-time crowd is sort of thinning out. I think a lot of people who became accustomed to kind of starting on step two with clients, like they're already kind of committed to making the move. Those are that's the low hanging fruit for those who stuck around, because a lot of those agents are either just dropping out of the industry, um, literally or figuratively. They're disengaging with a lot of these prospects because um, they're not adept at having that initial conversation, because they never had to before. So I think it is a time where um, the the market is looking for knowledge and insight and guidance, but more than anything else, just someone to just bounce ideas off of, or someone to just be actively in communication with. So I think you can find yourself cultivating a lot of relationships now that were tougher to source a couple of years ago. Anyone's uncle could have sold a house 2 years ago, and where was the value of being in a group or a top producer or having a track record at that point? It didn't matter when the house was selling itself, and everyone wanted to buy and sell. But when we're in a little tougher market to navigate, that's where the value really comes into play, and your experience and being able to talk, whether in today's market or reference again, a previous cycle or something to that effect, where you can really inform um, people about the general nature of real estate and how it does cycle through, and give them a little bit of a broader perspective of how the market works, and kind of reassure them that it's there's never a perfect time. It's about your life, and you can make adjustments in any moment at any given time. So you don't have to sit on the fence. And I think a lot of people are just kind of hanging out on this fence, and they're not getting any good advice from the people they started talking with initially, because they haven't been through this, and they don't have enough experience to really guide them through. You know, there isn't a reference point
Yeah.
for some of these agents to be able to say, look, I mean, I went through this back in 2010 with somebody, or 2015, and at the end of the day, you make the most of the current situation, and you don't let that deter you from what you're trying to do with your life, and with your timing. A lot of people are kind of stalling on other elements of their life. Maybe if they don't feel like they want to sell their condo and buy a house, then can they start a family? Are they postponing getting married? I mean, everything kind of ties into each other, in terms of people's natural progression through life. So I do think it's valuable. We become more valuable um, by just being someone that can even listen,
Yeah.
more than anything else.
Yeah, you are so right. I have just one this idea of listening is important because I think especially when it's outside of the sale, right? So like outside of the sales transaction cycle, how can you still be a listener a year after the home was sold or bought, right? And and that's really a really important skill because if your client knows every year or however often you might reach out to people that you've previously worked with, um, if every year they know, oh, my guy checks in on me, or my woman, or whoever, right? My agent checks in on me and makes sure that everything's okay, make sure that I'm doing okay, and then if I want an updated sort of here's what my home is worth, I can go to my agent. They can figure that out for me. If I need a plumber, if I need to know what's going on with this Fed rate increase, I can call my agent. Agent being the consultant or the answer person versus just the person that says this is the home that you want, right? Because we know that people can make that decision mostly by themselves, although obviously agents are critical for that as well. But I have one question for you, and I always love I just started wanting to do this in more recent episodes because we want to humanize all of you're a top producer, you're a superstar, you work on a superstar team. um, what's a mistake that you've made with a client or in your business that you wish you hadn't, or a mistake that something that you can share so that we can bring you down to our reality of imperfection? But tell us something that you did that was a mistake.
Oh man, I mean, where do I even begin? I Everything I've done well has been the result of about a dozen things I've done poorly. So
Yeah.
um, I think just trying to be someone I'm not, or trying to be an expert in something I'm not, that's kind of come back to bite me quite a handful of times. Um, the ego can get in the way,
Sure.
and I've been asked to list or advise on properties that I just don't have the first clue about, and I need to educate myself prior. But I take it on because I want to. I mean, I sold about 20 parcels of land last year in Moni, Illinois, and until the client called me and told me about them, I didn't know where that was on the map.
I've never heard
Um,
of that.
yeah,
That's how
uh,
far away it
it's
must be.
it's pretty far away, and you know, I it took me about 2.5 years to sell it, because it took me about a year and a half to figure out what I was selling in the process. So I did kind of make an ass out of myself on that. Fortunately, some of the parcels were $10,000 a piece, and and the client was very patient with me. But yeah, I've been getting calls from hog farmers about cattle capacity or pole barns and whatnot. You know, I would say my biggest mistakes are not teaching myself or not looking for guidance on something that I am not experienced with um, before committing
Yeah.
to trying to sell them or represent someone on a purchase. It's you can get yourself into a little bit of soup there, but I've done it a handful of times. Sometimes it's how I end up learning about what I'm lacking in terms of knowledge. But in
Better
hindsight,
to learn before the client.
in hindsight, I would probably want to work with someone experienced first before I jump in the pool with a client. So back to the serve your clients well principle. Learning on the fly isn't always the best move, and I've made an ass out of myself several times. Just kind of picking it up as I go.
Well, it's okay. We're all human. We all screw up all the time, right? So it's just it's a matter of learning and moving on. And I appreciate you sharing, being vulnerable and sharing that. And it's a good lesson too. It's like, hey, if you get this commercial opportunity and you're like, I don't know about this, I don't know what this is, I don't know, I don't even know what this sector means. Yeah, maybe pass it over to someone else. Not you. I'm saying in general. If you find yourself in this situation, save yourself a lot of headache and find someone else to refer it to, and then you can learn alongside them and still earn a part of the commission. But I get it. It's we all want to say yes to everything. Of course we do. Everybody does. It's like when somebody comes in and goes, wants to interview with us. We have about 800 agents, and they go, would you guys accept me? I'm like, oh, we'll accept you. It's more of a matter of whether we'll meet your needs because we want to say yes to everyone too, right? And that's gotten us into trouble as well. We brought on agents who were like, oh, what were we thinking? That was dumb. So I get it. Even brokerages make these kind of errors. It's all just part of growing. And Cyrus, I really appreciate your time, and I really just love how steady you are in your business, and how sort of just you're not like a glitz and glam flash guy, which I love, because those types of people tend to get the most publicity or the most press. But it can be tough. Those conversations I've had with people like that can be difficult because it's harder to get into the meat of like what they actually do, because there's so much of an image component associated with that. And I love the fact that you're like, I'm just me. Obviously, you're a very educated person, which I think also allows you to provide additional content. Thank you. Somebody just gave us a nice comment there on our live stream. So thank you for that. But anyway, this is a great place to wrap up. Now, if anyone out there, by the way, has clients who are moving to the Chicagoland area, and you are looking for a realtor to refer those clients to, Cyrus would love the opportunity to work with you. He obviously works for one of the biggest teams in Chicago. He's a top producer himself. He's highly educated, super, super well respected in our community. Cyrus, if there is another agent, and by the way, and I don't know if I'm speaking for Cyrus, so Cyrus, correct me if I am wrong, but if you are also thinking about maybe joining a team and want to talk to Cyrus about that journey, maybe consider joining the group he's with, which is an awesome group, by the way, Mario Greco group. If you're an agent, and you want to reach out to you, or if you're an agent who might have a referral for you, what would be the best way somebody would reach out to you?
Yeah, feel free to reach out directly to me. It's Cyrus at mggroupchicago.com. Very accessible. We have a great website. We have an awesome team, great model, just some brilliant people, and it's a lot of fun to work alongside some of the most amazing people I've ever worked with.
It's a
And
good group.
there's a reason I've been here for 8 years, and I'm looking forward to the next eight.
Yeah.
I have learned more in the past couple years, actually, I learned more in the first year with this group than I did in my first 11.
Another
So if you want,
big reason to consider partnering up with a team is you just get to learn from avatars in some cases. Like in your case, you're working for literally a legend in this Chicago industry or Chicago real estate industry. So also, everyone, before you sign off today, first of all, we want to thank Cyrus for being on the show. Yes, he's awesome. He's great. He gave us
thank
his
you, DJ.
time. Really appreciate him. On behalf of the audience, thank you, Cyrus. And also, on behalf of Cyrus and myself, we want to thank the listeners and the viewers and everyone who checks out our show. We are so grateful for you. The reason we do this is because, thank goodness, you are so kind and tell other people about it, because we don't do any marketing. So thank you. I mean, I should. I'm a marketing guy. I should figure out how to do that. But in the meantime, thank you for doing it for me. So please tell a friend. That's the only thing we ask. Tell just one other realtor about this show. Send them over to our website, keepingitrealpod.com. Every episode can be streamed, and of course, we're on every podcast directory. And we've got some really cool stuff coming up for this year. So maybe some contests, maybe some giveaways, all sorts of fun things from some of our vendors. So stay tuned. We'll have more information there. And we have a new show that we're launching here in a week or so, which I haven't even mentioned until now. So I'll talk about that shortly. Anyway, on behalf of everyone here, Cyrus, again, thank you so much. You're awesome. We appreciate you. And again, if you're an agent, you want to refer any business to Cyrus, he would love to chat with you. So reach out to him. And if you're a buyer or seller and you're in the Chicagoland area, reach out to Cyrus as well. We may have some non-realtors listening who want to learn about top realtors. And of course, Cyrus is. So reach out to him, and he's a great guy and just super kind and super smart as well. All right, Cyrus, thank you so much. And we will see everybody on the next episode.
Thank you for having me.